All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Best Self Blueprint. As you all know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people who have the knowledge, insights, and experiences as to what it takes to truly move that dial towards becoming the best version of yourself. So, this next guest has quite the backstory. It begins as him working full time as a comedian. He helped start the education branch of Comedy Sports Milwaukee, and at only 19 years old, he owned his own theater company. However, he had a major wake up call after his dad had a heart attack. At that point, he transitioned into the outdoor industry, starting a guiding and volunteer organization that held the record for the largest volunteer day in history at Devils Lake State Park in Wisconsin. On top of his organization, he also coaches rock climbers and takes on extremely challenging climbing routes himself. And all while doing this, he's a Boy Scout leader, LGBTQ plus advocate, and overall inspiration to many, many people. He is a man of many talents, and I know you'll learn a lot from him. So allow me to officially introduce Jacob. How you doing, man?
I'm well. I feel like I'm not a very silly person. I should say that, but I think the concept of me is very silly. So just like listening to that, I was like, oh, I get why people think that I am a weird person.
It's really fun to, because obviously like you've lived it, so it's a lot more spread out for you, but it's really fun doing the research and asking you the questions beforehand, because I basically like watch a 12-hour version of your life's movie as I'm
Right.
prepping the intro. So it's really cool just seeing your path and like going from really successful in comedy to then like you kind of had that, oh, I need to transition and do something and correct me if I'm wrong, something that really kind
Right.
of like lights that passionate fire inside of me. And
Sure.
it
I mean,
sounds
there's a bit more to that. We'll get there, but there
perfect.
was a bit more to that than that. Can I ask you a question? When you were prepping for this, did you Google my name at all?
I did not. So
Okay,
usually I
good. That's
do,
great.
but you gave me more than enough. And then also our mutual friend Deb, who thank you to Deb for uh referring me to Jacob.
Oh, the
Yeah,
best person. Yeah.
she had more than enough info, all good things to say about you. So
There's
yeah.
like, yeah, there's just there's a lot of things that when you're a comedian. See, I made the mistake because I started professionally working in it when I was like 15, maybe younger than that, maybe 14. I started when I was like a freshman in high school. Um, like I would come home on like Saturdays, like smelling like cigarettes and booze. Like just because I would be like not even on stage, I'd be like telling people where to sit and stuff. And it's back when you could like still smoke indoors. And I was just like a teenager that wanted to be on stage and being funny so bad. But you make choices at that point of like, what is my stage name going to be? And I made the mistake of using my not just my name, but like my legal full name. So everything, so everything I've had to go back at this point in my life. I had to go back to like publications and be like, I need you to pull that article down because I cannot have that written about me anymore.
Wow. That must have been a decent amount of backtracking, probably.
um, I think it kind of dawned on me not too long ago, actually, maybe like a year and a half ago, where all of a sudden I was like, huh, I just realized that there are like very Googleable things about me that maybe I should ask to not have up anymore.
So this may lead not directly, but the
It
thing I
might,
wanted to get into first is I know you wanted to touch on the importance of taking chances. Now,
uh-huh.
some of those chances may lead to not the best Googleable things about you, but
Right.
also I think some of the best things in life come from, I think most of the best things in life come from the willingness and pursuit of taking chances. So if you could talk about your mindset behind the importance of that, I think that'll be really powerful.
Well, I think that my parents are to blame for that because I have like I don't just have like supportive parents. I have like parents that make sure that I am doing creative things. Where like I have like a stable job and stuff right now, which my parents are very happy about. But I also get random phone calls from my mom being like, "Are you still painting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still painting." She's like, "Okay, good. Don't ever stop doing that." I'm like, okay, great. Or they're like, "When are you recording your next album?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It hasn't come to me. And they're like, okay, I'm just making sure. I'm like, I have a job and healthcare. You know that, right? Like, that's great. But like, what about this other weird things that you can do? So I think that I have kind of always been pushed into the maybe not the most conventional choices. So to me, like, I don't know, taking chances and making choices and doing things uh, comes very naturally. It's not something that I necessarily think about. And a lot of times to a fault where I'm like, I want to do this. And then I do it. And I'm like, all right, now I'm done with that. And then 2 years later, people are like, are you still doing that thing? And I'm like, ooh, that was that one time. And I did it and I did it okay. So I'm moving on to the next thing. I'm kind of I like too many things. I want to do too many things.
I think that's really important. So the way I view that is,
Mhm.
yes, like you said, you do need at least one thing that, is going to provide you the resources you need and the income you need and all of that. But I'm like you. I don't even know how many hobbies where um people think like, "Oh, I'm just, a flaky dude," but it's like, "No, I'm genuinely just interested in that many things."
Yeah, way too many things.
And I think that's such a fun part of life is getting to experience such a wide variety of things and to have that balance of, okay, yes, I have these few core things that I'm going to focus on and be consistent
Mhm.
with and really pour a lot of my time and effort into. But then with that free time, who's to say I can't try 50 new things every week?
Yeah, I think that idea of providing for yourself is something that I've come into in the age that I am now. I'll say what I am. I'm 28. I'm nearing 30, and I don't want to. I don't. I'm like edging towards that, and I'm like, I'm not 30 yet. Um, if you ask my kids on team, though, I'm about 35, and I have gray hair. That's what they'll say about me.
Mm,
Because they're great. But the providing thing is a new thing for myself because uh I think that there is this kind of like romanced version of like a bohemian lifestyle where I'm just gonna live in a loft and I'm gonna create all day and do a bunch of things. I would like to live that, but I think that I would need a trust fund in order to do that, and I don't have that. But boy, have I tried! I've definitely tried doing that.
yeah, I think one important aspect, and I think you'll agree as someone who also works with kids with rock
Mhm.
climbing, with Boy Scouts, with all these different things, is that,
They're my life, and if I could have some more adult time, that would be great.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I totally agree with that. Now, one thing I think is a huge advantage of working with kids is you have that tether to being childlike with your curiosity, with your
Mhm.
excitement, with your passion. Talk about the benefit of that, of not only that kind of tether to it, but also I feel like although you're the teacher, they teach you just as much.
Yeah, I actually just gave a compliment to two of my boys that are, or one was on team last year, and then he graduated and he's off in college. That's an entire success story that I'm very happy with. The coaching staff did an amazing job with him, and he's off doing incredible things now. And then another boy who has a couple of years left on team, but they're both way too strong for their own good. And this past summer, during our summer training sessions, I coached mainly them like 3 days a week for about like 2 or 3 hours at a time. And I got so much stronger in like a crazy way um, because I was around those two. And granted, they're like half my age. But yeah, I mean, you do learn a lot. The tether thing is interesting because um, I started working with kids when I was doing comedy because I took over like excuse me, oh my god, edit that out later. Just kidding. We're all gassy. It's all okay. All make shame noises. Um, I started working with little kids like 7 to 12, I think was the age, maybe 8 to 12. Um, in the summertime at Comedy Sports, I took over like their summer camp program, and that boomed, and I had a really good time doing that. And then I was offered at that point, which was like my dream, which was to take over the high school league program. and I got to take over it with like one of my favorite people in the world, Alan Guskowski, who is still a comedian, and he's a professor of theater at UWM, University of Milwaukee. And I got to work, and that was the program that like I came up through in comedy sports, because so it just ended up being like a total dream. And we went from having like 30 kids to like 150 or 200 kids over the course of like 3-4 years maybe. And so I have kind of always enjoyed that. I think part of it is that I lost a bit of my teenage years of being a kid. I mean, you're still a kid when you're like, 14 to 18 years old. You're stupid. I'm so anybody that's listening that's age, you're stupid. And it's not your fault. It's cool. You get to like learn a lot. But I spent most of those years working in a comedy club around people that were, in their mid 20s into like their 60s. And so part of it, I think subconsciously, this is weird that you brought this up because I've been reflecting on this, is that I wanted to be able to provide kind of like the positives that you get through going through a program like that, while taking away the negatives of like losing your teenage years and being like a kid, and just being able to like play and be delightfully innocent, because kids are exposed to so much now, like nonstop. Every day, in my eyes, a teenager, it just is like a Law and Order SVU episode every day. It's like horrifying to me. And I'm like, come in here, it's fun. We can play and do nothing. So I think there's kind of that. I think that's why I'm so attached to working with kids, specifically teenagers, is because I want to be able to provide that. And in turn, I'm getting a little bit of that back that I feel like I lost out on, which is not always the best projection to make. And I have to pull myself back sometime of being like, okay, you're having too much fun. This is still your job. But yeah, I think that's where it comes from with me for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the balance that's hard to find for someone like yourself, like myself, who wants to, go out, have fun, make the most of your time, do all these creative things. Is it's a really interesting balance, and I think it's a little different for everybody, between having like routine, discipline, consistency, all those, while having the abstract, fun, creative, curious, exciting. And to be able to integrate those two, I think is really important. So I have this concept I've talked about a couple times on here. I call it creatively disciplined. So finding a way to integrate things that you have to do with things that you would do even if you had free time. So,
Sure.
for example, and I want to get into training and nutrition and all that with you as well. I think this is a
Oh
good
boy,
segue.
nutrition is a yeah. No. We should bring somebody else on to talk about nutrition. I'm like
Well, at
sitting here
least training.
fascinated about pizza. Training we can talk about, yeah.
So, like for training, you're a rock climber. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good integration of rock climbing is a crazy workout for anyone who hasn't done it before. Go to a rock climbing gym and you'll find out. But it's also such a fun activity, especially for you. And so it's like that. And I think if people could, almost get back to, ironically, as we're talking about being a kid of in like third grade, where you draw the Venn diagrams, like, okay, cool,
Yep.
discipline, fun. All right, what goes in the middle? And try to just isolate that section.
There are so many parts of people at this point, I hope, have been exposed via media um, to climbing in some way, shape, or form. At this point, if the world hadn't decided to be awful in 2020, we would have already seen it in the Olympics. So people would have already had like a higher understanding of what it is. Um, but it's very silly. Climbing is very silly. It's like it's really painful all the time that you're doing it, but it is really graceful and it's very strong, but it's a lot of problem solving. It's individual based, right? Like the success is of an individual, but it requires more than one person in order to do it. Um, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's boring stuff too. There's like off the wall training when it comes to lifting, when it comes to hangboarding, when it comes to campus boarding, all that stuff. it does become mathematical, and you have to convince yourself that it's fun in some points, especially when you reach a specific level of climbing. I think I was just talking to one of my climbing partners, Kyle Harding, and he and I just broke into like double digits of bouldering this year. And we both, without telling each other, ended up coming up with elaborate training plans for the winter. And once we found that out, we were like, oh, it's because both of us know that it's because if we want to keep succeeding in the way that we are, we have to kind of put the fun to the side for a little bit and do the stuff that is not fun. I mean, before I found climbing, I lifted a lot in my very early 20s, and yeah, I couldn't do it because it was just, I don't like the idea of like picking something up, putting it down. Like, I don't know when to go up in weight. Like, I don't know. I bless the people at Gold's for even letting me in that gym, but I guess money's money at that point. So yeah, I agree with you, and that's the reason I like climbing so much, is because it is rather creative when you participate and view it.
And it's such a good moving meditation. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just the ability to really tune everything else out, especially when you're on a route that's closer to your max capacity,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, or max level difficulty. You're not thinking about your worries in the next week. You're not thinking about that thing that person said to you earlier that day. You're
Right.
thinking about the next hold or how you're going to shift your weight. And it's almost like a dance with yourself and with the route. And there's something to be said about the beauty found in the simplicity of it as well as in the complexity of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was the first thing I did in my childhood was that I was a dancer for 13 years. Um, and I think that's why I took to climbing so much. Any of my kids that watch this are going to hear me say, I was a dancer for 13 years, and they're going to all roll their eyes, and I'm going to walk into practice because they hear that nonstop from me. But I think that's why I like it so much, is that it's just kind of like dancing on rocks, or it's swimming on rocks. It was also the first sport that I found that I uh, felt like I fit in, or that I was like allowed to do. Because if you meet me or you look at me, I'm like not. Nobody wants me on a football field. I don't want me on a football field, right? And when I was in high school, we didn't have. There wasn't direct access in the Milwaukee area to like climbing team. That was way more of like a Brookfield area, Waukesha area thing. We didn't even know about it. We had the traditional like tennis, soccer, basketball, football, swim, track and field. And I tried track and field, I tried swim, felt very uncomfortable the entire time. There's no way I would have tried anything else. They did try to get me to kick for the football team because I was a dancer, so I have this like really high kick that I'm able to do. But I was not interested.
Hey, you stuck to your guns. I appreciate that.
I kind of regret it sometimes.
So one thing I want to get back to, because I really want to hit home on this, and I think you will have good advice for people on this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's someone who wants to take a chance, whether it's asking that person out, whether it's trying out that new hobby, whether it's, starting a new job,
Mm-hmm.
but they just don't. I need your two-part advice on this. The first part is, what advice would you give that person
Mm-hmm.
to almost motivate them to take that step? And then the second part is, what can they expect in terms of challenges when they
Oh.
decide to take a chance?
I think that I'm glad this is a two-part question, but I think that it all depends on the situation at hand. Everything is so situational. Um, and I think that what do I say? I'm very big on listening. Like, I'm very big proponent of active listening. It's what towards the end of me working in comedy, I really wasn't performing. I would like go into corporations and I would teach active listening. So whether it was for, the Wisconsin DNR or Northwestern Mutual or some tech company, whoever it might be, Um, listening is very much key because, like, okay, so you bring up the idea, right, of asking somebody out, which I am probably the worst person to talk to about that. Um, but I think that it's a good situation to bring up because you know off the bat whether or not somebody wants you to ask them out. If you just listen to them and you look at them and you pick up on their cues, um, I don't think that life is a romantic comedy where it's like you loved me the entire time. And it's like, no, you obviously loved each other the entire time. So maybe relationship advice I'm not the best at because I should have asked about 10 people out at this point. Um, when it comes to making a professional change, I think that there is so much that goes into it. You know, there's the, you know, first off, how happy are you? And not just that, but like, how happy does it make other people around you? Right? Because there are people that aren't happy in their jobs, but they have a partner and they have two kids and they have a mortgage and they have car insurance and they have internet bills. And you know, when you're unhappy, but that's what's weighing on you, and maybe making a change isn't the best thing to do unless you know absolutely sure that it's going to be able to provide the same. If you're like me and you're very young and beautiful and you're single and there's nobody relying on you, it, you need to just do it, which is the worst advice. And that is the why am I even on this? It's the worst advice, but it's you know it's also Nike's slogan. But just doing it, you know, I remember the day that I was not where I realized that I was not happy doing comedy anymore. I was on stage and I was on the side of the stage and I turned to my friend Alan and I said, "Huh, I think this is my last show." And he said, "What?" And then I just walked on stage and I like did my thing and I walked off. And we were sitting down at the bar after, and I looked at him and I said, "I don't want you to tell any person that it's my last show, but like that, I'm done. This is it." And it was just over. Um, and the bartender heard us, and she brought over shots, and I got very drunk that night. But it was great. I did it for 12 years, you know, and I was young, and I knew that I had missed out on a lot of things that I wanted to do, and there's a thousand other things that play into that situation. Um, but I just knew that it was time to be done, and that's when I pulled the trigger on it. And I don't know why people do things that don't make them happy. You know, it's I don't like being unhappy. I was unhappy for a long time. I had depression as a kid. I suffer from really bad anxiety. Um, which weirdly has been fine during COVID. I'm like, everybody else is catching up to me. I'm good. Y'all are nervous all the time. Welcome to my life. Um, I think professionally, I've never had issues. Relationship wise, I'm not the best person. But yeah, did that answer anything? I'm rambling, man.
So you had a couple points in there that I really want to touch on. And
You're
luckily,
like about an hour ago, you had a point that I would like to get.
there were a few. Now let's see if I can like actually remember them because like you, I'm big on active listening, which for the longest time I always listened to respond as opposed to listening to understand and to digest the information fully.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in and of itself is one of the lessons where oftentimes you find that you get stuck on one thing someone said and you just don't listen to anything else they have to say because you're only looking to respond to that. So that's one takeaway is practice active listening. Look someone in the eyes when they're talking. Really try to open up and receive what they're trying to tell you in its entirety, and you'll have such better connections with people because they can tell when you're actively listening, or if you get caught on one thing and then all of a sudden you're just like, yep, okay, cool, yep.
I hear
And
the day that I found out that I was bad at listening. It's a doozy. I was I was I was 18. It's probably 18, and it's really when I started to make like a livable amount of money doing comedy. Um, because I was doing like 5 shows in-house, and I was on the road the rest of the week, and I was teaching workshops, and I was doing kids and all that, all that stuff. And I got done with a show, and I did not have that good of a show. And Tim Higgins, who is an amazing comedian in Milwaukee, who has been doing it longer than I've been alive, gave me a note, and I responded with, sure, sure, sure. And he got really close to my face. Can I swear on here?
Yeah, go for it.
He goes, are you fucking listening to me, or are you just saying sure? And I was like, oh, I'm just saying sure. In my head, I was like, I'm listening. And he was like, are you? What did I just say? I had no idea what he had just said. And then I quit for 6 months. I didn't. I was like, I wouldn't even come back in the building for like 6 months. And I got a phone call from my creative partner at the time, Mike, and he was like, so you gonna come back or what? And I was like, yeah, I'll come back. And this is my tip for active listening. When somebody is saying something, you whisper it back to yourself. It makes you look like a crazy person, but you whisper exactly the thing that they did, or you can repeat it in your head. You repeat it back with the same inflection, the exact same words that they use, and that's how you digest it.
That's a good tip. I've actually never heard that one before. Of all the conversations I've had about active listening, I think it is a powerful tool for making sure that you're paying attention, because if you're not paying attention, you just won't even have the wherewithal to start doing that. Also, I'm sure there's got to be benefits to improving your memory if you start taking up that practice.
I have the worst memory of all time. So probably, actually, no, that's not true. I have a great memory. I have a horrible memory of, I can't remember beta, like information for climbing. If I get off of a route or a problem, I could not tell you the first move. Conversations, I can tell you what happened fucking 6 years ago today at 2:00 in the afternoon. I love it. But it's because I love drama too. I want to be able to pull it back out. And I'm like, oh, really? Because I remember.
On this date 3 years ago.
Yeah, you said, and let the record show.
That's awesome. All right, so I want to pivot a little bit. I want to talk about training, because
we can go anywhere you want to, man.
Sweet.
This is your show.
This is going to turn into a runaway train real quick, because there are a few very different topics I want to talk about. With training, what's your mindset around it? Because I know you talked about.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is you said, like, we're going away from fun for a little bit. Like we were training and having fun. Now we're to a point where we understand, like, we need to eat our vegetables. We need to do the not fun stuff.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
I am not a person. There are people, Mary Cregan, who is my boss and one of my best friends, and she's the head coach for Adventure Rock. She is a person that finds fun in like training. Like, she is so disciplined she hangboards, religiously at her home. She knows exactly what she's going to do, or so it seems. She's going to watch this and be like, you made me sound really good. And I'm going to say, that's the last time I'm ever going to do that. But she's a person that I envy a lot with that, because I am not that way at all. I don't like being like, okay, on Monday I'm going to lift, and on Tuesday I'm going to campus, and then I'm going to do this. I think it's because I don't like rules, and I don't like people telling me what to do, even if it's me telling me what to do. And the act of it is like not fun to me, but the reason I do it is because I think it's the reason that climbing, I got really addicted to it, and then it took over my life to the point that it's my career now, is that it's you can feel and see the difference in your body over time, right? Because our grading scale, for those of you that don't know, we have 2 different grading scales in the US. We have the Yosemite system, which is for ropes. It's always 5 point another number, right? So 515D is the hardest thing in the world. 50 would be the easiest thing. And we're all somewhere in there. And then like for bouldering, there's the Vermin scale or the V scale, which is V and then a number. So it's either VB for the easiest thing or V17, which is there's only one. It's the hardest thing in the world. We're all somewhere in there. But you can see it because you get to train, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I wasn't able to do 512. Okay, now I can do 512, but it's at my max. Okay, I got to train a little bit more. Okay, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, no, I'm doing like 512C. All right, like 13 is just like a little bit, it's like almost there. I have never climbed 513, everybody, because I'm not a rope climber. So everybody, all my friends will be like, oh, 513, huh, Bach? For me, it'd be like, okay, oh, I did V8. Okay, I should try a 9. Oh, I should try a 10 to see where I'm at. So I think that is very much where my mind is, where it's like, in order to play hard, which opens up many doors, right? You need to be able to like shut up and be strong for a little bit. And I think that so I broke my ankle in 2016. I was seeing how long I could go on this podcast without bringing up this injury. In 2016, I broke my ankle. Was it 2016? Nope. 2018, I broke my ankle. In 2018, I broke my ankle in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which I'm headed to on Monday night.
Be careful.
Back down there. Dude, I've been down like 6 times since then too. And every time I go down, I'm like, I'm going to do that boulder that hurt me. And then I never get on it. And today, of course, I looked at my friends and I was like, I'm going to do that boulder finally. I broke my ankle and I couldn't walk for about 6 months. And it was when I first became a coach. So I literally broke it. I was working in the outdoor programs and outreach for REI. And then I had a week off, and then I was switching jobs and I was becoming a coach at Adventure Rock. And I went down, and within the first hour, I broke my ankle.
Oh.
So I went to the hospital there, and I was told that it was a sprain, which it was not. I pulverized my talus bone, which is the bone that connects your foot, heel, and ankle together. And I drove back for 15 hours on it. And then a week later, I went into the ortho surgeon here, and they were like, "You're going in for surgery tomorrow." So I have 5 screws and a plate in my ankle still, and I couldn't walk that entire time. And I would just go to the gym every day, and I would like coach, but I would have my parents, because I needed them to drive me everywhere. It was my right ankle. I would have them drop me off like 3 hours early, and I would just weight lift. I would like sit and lift, and I would hang board, and I came back so much stronger than what I was before. And I don't think this is about, I keep saying stronger and like higher grades and all that stuff, but I actually like the way that Mary Cregan thinks about it, which is like, of course I want to climb harder grades, because if I can master whatever grade that is, right? If I all of a sudden become this like, consistently I could climb V10, right? I have one V10 under my belt. All of a sudden it's like everything below that is now open to me. So I have, however many climbs. If I were to just stay at like V4 or V3 my entire life, well, I'd be kind of like stuck around that range. But I want to have fun on like all of these. I want to play on every jungle gym, right? No matter how hard the monkey bars are. And I think that's what pushes me so much, is that I am starting to feel in the last like 2 years more and more doors opening of experiences that I can have. And that's something that like kind of forces me to be disciplined, because I don't want that ever taken away from me again. I never want to sit again for 6 months. Even during lockdown, I was like, well, I guess I'm going for another walk today. I'd be like 3 walks in. I would like walk. I live in Bayview, Milwaukee, and I would walk to the art museum and back like 3 times a day, because I'm a crazy person. Yeah. How was that answer? Was that anything?
Dude, that was really powerful. If people actually take away what you said, so I'm going to dissect it a little bit.
Sum it up
If
for people because I just ramble.
that's why I'm here. You're here to give the information. I'm here to
Great.
just, dissect it a little bit. So for anyone who is struggling to, like you said, like do those almost disciplinary aspects of things, or if you feel unmotivated to take that next step, understand that there is a requirement from you to unlock that next level. It's not just going to unlock. The door's not just going to open.
Mhm.
Whether you have to, mold a key or kick the sucker down, like you have to do something and you have to figure out how to do it. And then you actually have to go do it. And I think that was really powerful because you even said, you're like, I am not that kind of person. I do not find joy in that. Now I do. I'm totally one of those people. I love that. But it's good to have someone from your perspective say, like, I don't find it fun. It is not that exciting to me, but I understand that the reward for doing it is so much better than the
Mhm.
short term reward for avoiding it or not doing it.
Right.
And so that's a really powerful statement coming from somebody who doesn't enjoy that stuff. Now, when I say it, people are like, well, you enjoy weightlifting, you enjoy going for long runs, you enjoy
Right.
that stuff. So I'm like,
Right.
but it's still true. I understand that. But so I think for people who hear me talk about that, now that they hear it from the point of view of someone who feels the way they feel, that's going to go a long way.
I think that I'm also a very I don't want to say a jealous person. Sure. No. I'll say that. That's like a pretty big flaw of mine, and I very much believe in like earning things. Like I'm sure you've heard the phrase like building your pyramid, right? Like you have to do a bunch of the easy stuff, a bunch of the moderate stuff, a bunch of the moderately difficult stuff in order to like build to the top of this pyramid, which is like whatever goal you have, whether it's climbing, whether it's like running a marathon, whether it's doing like a century ride or, whatever it might be. And I don't like, I don't, I think that I get very jealous of like natural ability to do things because you see a lot of people come into the gym that are very much from like the fitness world that like find joy in like just like lifting or like whatever it might be, and they see my body type, which I'm a very tiny guy. I'm like 5'8". I'm 140 pounds. I have 2% body fat. I'm cold when it's 70. Um, I couldn't keep protein on if I wanted to. And I get kind of, I'm also very like, I can say this because I'm very faggy. And I think the reason I like climbing is because like I've earned my place there by like putting in the time and like giving the effort and like dedicating myself to it, and which I don't feel everywhere. Like I didn't feel that way when I was like lifting because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not naturally good at this. My body type doesn't make sense for this. Other sports, it didn't like fit in well. My personality didn't. My body type didn't. And I get very resentful of people that seem, and this is an issue for me to work on. They seem to come in from this like other world and like breach into mine, and I'm like, no, you earn it. Like you
Mm.
do the easy things, like you recognize why people are good at this, and I think that's just leftover entertainment industry toxic behavior that's in me though.
Yeah, well, and I want to go back to what you were talking about with like the building your pyramid thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something people need to understand, especially in this, in my opinion, very unfortunate instant gratification period that we're in,
Sure.
where I think people will think like, okay, instead of building this whole pyramid, it's like, well, I laid 3 bricks down. Why am I not at the top yet?
Mm-hmm.
Like I did some work. What do you mean? And I think that's where you need to realize like, okay, what kind of pyramid are you trying to build? Are you trying to build a pyramid the size of this microphone or the
Right.
size of, the pyramids of Giza.
What do you got there? A blue? You got a
Yes,
blue?
yes,
Yeah, there
sir.
you
Um, and you need to understand what the process is going to be like. Obviously, yes, there are people who can get there faster than others. There are people who will build it better than others. But there is a certain time range and effort range that you're going to have to put in to get to the top, to get to that, top athlete level, top business level.
Yeah, I'm very story focused. Like I don't believe in fate, and I don't believe that like there is this like trajectory that we are on. But I do like storyline a lot, even like in real life. And I think the thing with the pyramid is that everybody's pyramids are going to look different. Um, some pyramids are smaller, some pyramids are wider. You know, there are people that climb that can climb a lot of easy things, and then one day it slowly builds up into like one really hard thing, or for them whatever that might be, and they're just done. You know, it doesn't get bigger at the top. It just is like a really wide bottom. There are other people that have very skinny pyramids where it's like, okay, they like built this like little base and all of a sudden just shot up. um and to be okay with your own pyramid's design is a very hard thing to do, because you are looking at everybody else's pyramid being like, oh, but I like that one. Oh, no, I like that one. I want this one. And you can take things from there and they can influence the design of your pyramid. Um, but at the end of it, uh, it's still yours, you know? Yeah, that was just a side piece that I had.
I love that. Build your own pyramid. That might have to be the name of this one.
There you go.
So, and I love what you said about like you need to understand, like you need to be able to appreciate the fact that yours is going to be unique. It's going to be like your fingerprint. I think there's something more beautiful about kind of following your own path and building that own like unique storyline as opposed to trying to just be a carbon copy of someone else's, because that story's already told. Like someone's already done that. But if you can put your spin on it and make it uniquely you, there's so much more beauty in that, at least in my
Right.
opinion. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think my pyramid is golden and it's beautiful and it gets shined every day.
all right, I
It's
love
also
it.
real wonky. It's like really weird shape. I'm notorious for skipping 2 grades. So like
Okay.
when I was climbing V5, I couldn't do a V6 to save my life, but all of a sudden I shot up to V7, and then I would
Huh.
drop down to V6, and all of a sudden I was like sending 8, and then I had to drop down to 7. I stayed at
Hmm.
7 for so long. It took forever to break into V8.
It's a fairly slow process. Once you kind of hit that like natural ability level and you start like actually having to, put in the work for it. And again, I'm not a huge climber. I don't do it all the time, but even still, it's an inch by inch process, definitely.
Yes, it is.
So anyone who's looking to rock climb, make sure you really enjoy it, because you're not just gonna all of a sudden be sending like the hardest of hard routes. It's gonna take a
or
little
you
bit to get
are,
there.
or you are is the thing. Like
Are
there
there
are
people who do that?
the kids. I I call them, okay. I call them the legendary up and coming children, and that is a very pandering name that I am mean for saying. But there are kids that come into the gym that just can fucking climb hard right off the bat, and as somebody who is almost 30, it pisses me off because I want to be able to do that, and I have to work really hard at it, and they don't.
Yeah, it's also I think a little easier to pull 60 pounds up the wall than 140 too. But
Yes, and it's also nice that they have 3 gyms in the metropolitan area accessible to them, opposed to one gym 20 miles away.
yeah, that is so true. Wow.
Yeah.
There was actually like, although I see why people think you're silly. So like it's like you got to dig a little bit, because you
Yeah.
you have this like just kind of like fun, like light personality,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a lot of really profound like nuggets of wisdom in these stories that you tell. You just tell them in a way that's like also so fun to hear, and so I can see why people just take it as like more entertainment.
You can be my manager. I'm looking for a new manager. You can be mine if you want. That's fucking great. Send
Perfect.
that off to Netflix. Um, yeah, I do like. I do think that I am uh silly, but I think that I'm also very like dry. People don't always pick up on it, or when I'm mean, people don't understand that I'm being mean. They think I'm being funny. I'm a hard person to read.
Uh,
One
Mr.
time, Alex Nimmer, who's from a very legendary climbing family, the Nimmer family. Alex coached for a very long time, and last season he and I were walking to the gym, and he said something. I said something rather mean to him, and which I thought was funny. And he said, "I said, oh, I'm sorry. It's funny because I'm gay." And he said, "No, you're an asshole." And I said, "Don't tell anyone. Don't let anybody know that that's the case."
We're keeping that on the down
We're
low.
getting
People
on the
don't
down
know yet.
low. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Okay, so as I mentioned beforehand, I do
Mm-hmm.
a final two questions, which
Is
one of
this
them,
wrapping up already? Oh my God.
oh yeah, we've been going for 45 minutes, 50 minutes,
Oh wow.
something like that.
That flew by.
So before I do that, because I'm sure, especially with like people who I know in the Ninja Warrior community are
Mm-hmm.
probably interested in rock climbing, I'm sure there are just going to be people interested in connecting with you based on like all the things you've done, all the
Yeah.
things we've talked about. So where can people connect with you if they have questions or just want to reach out?
If you want coaching from me, you can email jacob@adventurerock.com. That's the quickest and easiest way to get back to me, to get to me, and then I'll get back to you. Um, Otherwise, I update the only social media that I use is YouTube and Instagram. And Instagram is my favorite thing in the world, and I need to get rid of it because it's taking over my life. But it's at Jacob D Bach, JACOB DBACH, and just shoot me a direct message.
All right, you heard it there first. Slide into those DMs.
My favorite sign of the DMs, and my favorite emoji in the world is I recently just had a mustache, but the new emoji of like the glasses with the fake nose and mustache on it, it just looked like me as an emoji. So if you slide into the DMs, put that emoji on it first so I know where you came from.
Hopefully, you get a lot of those emojis.
I
I
hope
will be
so
very
too.
happy. Because then that also means people got this far on the podcast. So that
What's
would
your
be
favorite
great.
emoji? What's your favorite emoji?
Well, so the one I use the most is different than my favorite emoji. The
Okay,
one that I
okay,
use the most is
yeah,
just the
okay, sure,
like that.
yep.
My favorite is probably the yin yang sign.
Oh,
Just love
okay,
it. Yep. I used to, and I need to get a new one. For the longest time, I had a yin yang necklace,
gotcha.
and I was climbing a tree at Devil's Lake, and it got ripped off and just kind of
That
down
sounds
the
about
side of
right.
the cliff. So no more yin
Um,
yang necklace, but
my favorite, the one that I use the most is the face, the emoji that's about to throw up.
I like
I,
it.
I
I
think
like it.
it's I think it's hysterical no matter what somebody sends me to reply with that.
I'm gonna use that. Just totally random. I
Oh,
like
it
that.
throws people off and it's amazing. They're like, I hope you have a good day, and you just respond with
I'm totally using that. All right.
or if you
So,
pair that up with the crying one, like the one that's actually streaming
okay.
tears.
Someone
Because
says
people
something like really nice to you and you send them back like you're about to start
and
crying.
then throwing up. Yeah. That's my favorite.
I love it. All right. So it is time for the amazing finale. This is my favorite part. Just
Great.
because I thought of these questions, so I think they're pretty great. I'm pretty biased, but also we'll get into it. So the first question is,
Great.
what right now is the biggest obstacle between you and your best self?
Oh, wow. Um, Not being able to see a therapist right now. Um, I think that I have a lot of quarantine. Okay, what's happening in the world is horrible. Absolutely horrible. We live in the worst world in like history. It sucks. However, I think when lockdown happened, um, it made a lot of us face demons that we haven't been able to like bring up to ourselves before because we're always moving. And if you're always moving, you don't have to sit and think. But when you do have to sit and think, that's awful. Um, so I think there are just things that I have never faced before, that influence bad and toxic behavior in myself. And I think that the biggest one is being very like egocentric and coming from comedy where your job is to like literally sell that like you are worthwhile watching. Like people, when you're doing comedy full time, any performing really, what you're saying is like, it's crazy. You're like, you are going to pay me money to sit in a chair, not talk, and listen to what I have to say. That's nuts. However, we need it because entertainment is entertainment. Um, and I think that there are aspects of that that are great in confidence, being able to think creatively, being put into any situation that is like uncomfortable and feeling like you can conquer anything, being able to connect with anyone. But there are also parts of it that are horrible that you have to do, you know, ego, failure, but not failure in a good way where you like learn from it. Failure where you're like mad and you blame other people for it. The politics of it all. Um, so I think that that's probably the biggest thing between me and um, literally becoming a golden god.
Yeah, I think you're almost there.
I
I think you're
man,
close. That's that
I
last
think
1%.
I think I have about 10 more years of therapy to go to. But yeah, that sounds
No,
good.
that brings up actually a really good point. And I think there are a lot of people right now who obviously consciously they know like, okay, I'm uncomfortable because of this change in situation, change in my routine, change in this. But subconsciously, I think there, like you said, there's a lot of demons that were just kind of lying dormant. And now because you're not able to just distract yourself 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of getting put right in front of your face and you have to, if not confront them, they're just going to keep nagging at you. And so for people who are having problems with things like that, yeah, find a coach, find a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, find someone who can just help you through that thought process. And so I can guarantee you're not alone in that.
Demons are also super cool though, which is a weird part of it. Because if you don't have demons, that is so fucked up. Like if you have lived a life that like you don't feel the emotion of like shame or like sadness or resent or whatever it might be. I think that I don't know if it's our like Western culture or whatever it might be, but I think people are very we like negative feelings are still feelings and it's important that we feel them because because if you didn't, you wouldn't be a human. Like what I don't know what kind of life did you live where it was just like, oh, every day I did the thing and I'm fine with that. Like, how did you grow? Like, how did you become somebody? So I think for me, it's that I want to be able to face these demons, but I want to be able to do it by like acknowledging that they have made me better.
That's really powerful. And I hope other people take that into account and realize I call it like your shadow self. There are
Mm.
obviously parts of you that are whether it's negative emotions, negative words, actions that you put out into the world, negative just like the kind of dark parts of you that you're supposed to be ashamed of or kind of hide away. Those serve a really important purpose in life, and you said it, they help you learn about yourself, your whole self, your true self. They help you grow as a person, and to try to just tuck those away makes no sense and helps you in no way, because
No,
they're gonna come up whether you want them to or not. So you might as well bring them up, invite them to the forefront, and really like connect with them and figure out how to handle it and all that.
I think I think that's one of the cool things about working with specifically teenagers. So I coach two teams. I have very tiny children. I have 7 to 9 year olds, and they are so cool and so fun. Um, and then I have the group that you wouldn't think is the bigger criers, but they are, which is my teenagers. I coach 14 to 18 year olds. Um, Nobody cries more than a 16-year-old boy. Never forget that. But it's nice because they are just little people who are dealing with like real emotions for the first time. And Mario Stanley is a host of another podcast that I'm going to be on soon called Sends and Suffers. And he is a coach down in Texas. And I love what he says, which is always just like, he tells his kids, like, whatever you're feeling is valid right now, which is not just advice for them, but I think that's advice for like everybody. And I'm glad that he had words for that, because I would always do it in, as you can tell from this conversation, far too many words. But just being able to say like whatever you're feeling is valid is so important, because it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. So the last question, it's
This
less of a
has to be,
question.
this better be good, man, because you have hyped this up.
This is my favorite part of the podcast.
All
so
right.
the entire time, it's kind of just a back and forth between me and you.
Mhm.
Now you get to just directly challenge the audience. So if
Oh,
you,
shit.
yeah,
To a fight? All right. Knives are allowed. It's
duel-
behind the Burger King on 7th and Howell.
duel to the death. No.
Yeah.
So you get to challenge them. If you could pick one thing for the people listening to do, and when completed, it either, improves their day, improves them as a person, teaches them a deep lesson. What is one thing that you would challenge the audience to do?
This is so much pressure. Okay, what is something that I do every day that I think improves my life? What is something I do every day that I think they should do? Okay, so like here's the thing that pops in my head. It's like I spend 2 hours every morning like doing like prehab stuff. And I'm like, physically, that makes me feel great. But like, I don't want it. I want it to be so much cooler than that. Oh man. Okay. I think I got it.
All right, I'm ready.
I got it. And this goes back to working with kids too, which is nice. So one of my big climbing heroes is Alex Johnson, who is like she's a World Cup boulderer, and she was also I believe like the first out LGBT athlete for the U.S. team, and she has this great quote that her girlfriend told her right before she came out publicly. That was like, "Be the person who you needed when you were younger," right? Which I think is so it's so great to think about that. But you can't, like, that's a way to like live every day, but something that like you can do every day is when you feel like you are held back by something, no matter what it is, and you have that like little voice that comes into your head that goes like, you shouldn't do that because like that's not really your thing. Be like, tell that voice to shut up. Tell the bad voice to shut up one time a day, because then then hopefully you make like a choice.
So
is that what you were looking, or do you want something physical for people to do?
So
punch a stranger in the gut every day.
Physical contact. One person. No, so I'm gonna actually make a challenge out of your challenge, if that makes sense. So you said like be the person you needed as a kid.
Yeah.
I want this to be something people do. Write a paragraph explaining the person you needed as a kid.
Oh, I love that.
And then reread it and think about, okay, that's who I need to be. So I'll let you know.
I love this. This is collaboration. That's what that was. I like that.
This is a co-challenge.
This is a co-challenge. I love it.
Even though I kind of helped create it, I just let everyone who comes on as a guest know I do every one of the challenges that comes from these podcasts. So I'll type up my little paragraph, and then if you want, I can send it over to you so you can see who I needed as a kid.
What's been the hardest challenge for you to do?
So I'm actually working through one right now. So the very first podcast, the guest said, make a list of 10 things that make you extremely uncomfortable and just do them one by one. And
Oh.
I put things that make me extremely uncomfortable, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, socially.
You're gonna imagine.
And so
That would
I'm going through them. It's one of those things where I have to like amp myself up for an entire week, and then I'm like, all right, let's do
yeah.
it. And so I
Yeah.
do it, and so I'm doing a little I'm taking pictures and doing little videos of each one, and then I'll make a post about my experience and what I learned from each
What's
of
been
the
your
10.
favorite one so far?
So the one that I learned the most from was
I
my
would never in a million years go through with that.
this one was
Because
really
I
good.
don't get uncomfortable easily, so the stuff that does make me uncomfortable is like too much.
Yeah, so this one was physical discomfort. So my room gets really cold at night. It's on the lowest level, like
Mm-hmm.
cement. If you can't tell, like cement brick walls. So it
Oh, I
just
thought you were in prison. I thought
it's
this was
yeah,
like
you
a.
know, this is my 15 minutes to leave.
I love
No,
it.
so it gets cold. And so my challenge was spend a night sleeping on the ground in my room with no pillow, no blankets.
You are a fool.
And it was
Absolutely not.
I had when I did manage to fall asleep, I had the weirdest dreams. It was just
Yeah.
and then I couldn't tell if I was awake or asleep because it was just a weird
Here's a hint.
experience.
You weren't asleep.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you're way.
But it really so the reason I did it, one of the reasons is my bed is sitting right next to me. Like I
Mm-hmm,
have the
mm-hmm.
option to give up, go crawl in bed where it's nice and warm and cozy. But I believe in callousing your mind. So that was
Yeah.
one aspect, but also it really makes you appreciate having a bed because for me, I was still under a roof. I was still in the comfort of my own home. That was one night, and I was choosing to do that as a challenge.
Yeah.
To think about people who that's their life, like they don't have a roof over their head. And so just the immense gratitude that that filled me with being able to then the next night, like when I was super tired from not sleeping, I
Right.
got to crawl in a nice, warm, comfy bed. And so I'm trying to find like the deeper lessons in all of them.
I did a month in the backcountry for my outdoor education,
Whoa.
and it was miserable, and I hated literally every single moment of it. There wasn't a moment of it that I was like, I'm thriving. I was like, I will never again do anything like this. It was south of Tucson, Arizona, in the Galluros Mountain Range, and it was through Knowles, the National Outdoor Leadership School, and there was 11 of us on this trip, all strangers, no outside contact, and I'm like very much a Midwest boy. Like I am like, I want pine trees. I want like at most 1,000 foot elevation. I want like water everywhere, and it was the high desert in January, and no tent had a bottom to it. It was just like a tent where a pole's in the middle and it's just the ground. And it's all Bureau of Land Management land. So it's nothing but cow shit everywhere. Especially on like plateaus and stuff. We're in Slaw Canyons, not so much. Um, Scars from like cactuses, like rolling down a mountain of cactus, and the worst, the most physical, uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my entire life. We were trying to summit a mountain in a snowstorm, and the desert is so dry and like bitter cold. It's like in Wisconsin we have like humid cold where it's like there's like texture to the air most of the time. It like your hands are just, you can't feel anything. You are so thirsty, but you don't want to stop moving to drink because you would like lose warmth. That's blizzarding on you. You're like falling down. It was nuts, and I left my course early because I was that miserable.
Yeah, that sounds intense. It's one of those things now I
Yeah.
want to go do it just because like it sounds that intense and that's just, I'm that kind of person, but yeah, so it's that right now is probably the most intense one I've done, but there's also another one that I'm really looking forward to that the challenge was for an entire week. Every day you do one new thing that you've never done before in your entire life and you reach out to one person you haven't talked to in over a year.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
so that'll be a really fun one too. There have been a lot of good ones. So I'm going to do at the end of each month, I'll do like a monthly challenge recap and just talk about the challenges of the month, what I experienced from them, what people can hopefully expect when they do them, things like that. So
That's great. I love that.
yeah, it's like I said, it's
Were
just
you
a
always like this? Were you always a curious person?
I was always a curious. I like how this is like the interviewer becomes the interviewee. Um, yeah, so I definitely have always been a curious person. Grew up, we had a forest right behind my house. So I was always going back there.
Hmm.
This is going to sound like I was a total loner. I wasn't, but I always played sports with myself as a kid. So I'd set up like
Sure.
garbage cans and stuff as like the other players, and I would
I
like try
also
to
didn't have
school
friends
them.
as a
And
kid, so it's fine. You can relate to me.
yeah, so I always had a simultaneous curiosity and imagination, which is a really deadly combo when not kept in check.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a while when um, I went kind of astray, if you will, where when I went like last year of high school going into college, I was just very like always partying, always drinking, always doing things I
Oh,
shouldn't necessarily
dude.
be doing. And
I am never gonna lie. I I to this day, there is nothing that satisfies me more than an amazing house party. There is nothing in the entire world. I would I love it. Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, so
It's
that
so fun.
so I thought that was me for the longest time, but I
Hmm.
realized that that was only me because when you're not in that sober state of mind, or when you have the like crazy continuous distractions happening at like a house party, you don't, like we talked about, you don't let those demons in. And it hit that point where I just knew I had a lot of them. And there are people who do it out of celebration, they do it out of having fun, and I have
Hmm.
no judgment over that. But that wasn't me. I was doing it to avoid dealing with the problem between, my two ears.
Right.
And it hit a point where I just realized, for me it was rock bottom. It really wasn't actually that bad, but it was my rock
you're like
bottom.
you're like I'm hungover.
Yeah.
You are the one person that says like I'm never drinking again, and then you actually don't.
Yeah. But really it was one of those things where I'm like, if I keep doing the things I'm doing, and it wasn't just drinking, it was other stuff as well. But if I keep doing this, my life is going to end in nothing good. And so I went back to the drawing board and I went back to, okay, what did I love doing as a kid? And it was being curious, moving around, playing sports, talking with people.
And always sports, huh? Never anything else.
Um,
Never like art or anything.
So I used to, when I was in third grade, I wrote a lot of music. I thought I
Sure.
was going to be an international spy because I had spy gear.
You
Um,
are, and you are, and you will be.
oh, I still am waiting for the call, man. But yeah, I kind of dove into a lot of different stuff, but I'm starting to kind of get that back and realize like that's kind of what life is all about, is
Mhm.
handle your business. Yeah, but like live life, experience what there is to experience. But yeah, so I've always been curious, but I've not always used it in a positive manner.
Sure, sure. I'm a facilitator, like through and through. Like that's something that that's actually something I have to deal with as a person in a different environment now. As in, I'm working as a climbing coach, not as an entertainer full time. Is that I am used to being like producer, director, performer, like business associate, owner, all of these different things, and I have a very hard time staying in my lane because
Mm,
I want every part of it. I want my fingers in every little part of the honey pot that I can possibly touch. Um, and so I don't think for me that partying was ever, no, that's a lie. Partying was very toxic. But I loved facilitating things and being able to like bring people together and stuff like that. So for those of you listening, there are bad parts and good parts of partying. I know the bad parts very well.
all right, we are in agreement on
That is an
that.
off-air conversation.
Absolutely. We can continue that after this, but officially, this is the end of the podcast. So thank you for everybody listening. Jacob, I want to thank you for just sitting down, taking the time. I want to thank you for the information you gave everybody, all the amazing insights from your perspective. But after diving into kind of your backstory, I want to thank you for being who you are, because being someone who went out and took chances and is helping inspire kids and other adults and people in so many different areas, it's really inspiring as someone who's looking to do the same. So I want to thank you for just being who you are, for doing the things you do, and for being willing to take that and
Oh, thanks,
help
man.
share with people on the podcast.
Thanks. I'm a fun person. I'm not a perfect person. That's what
I
I'll
like
say.
that. That's a t-shirt right there.
There you go. Somebody write it down. Somebody make it happen.
All right. So for everybody listening, again, thank you for tuning in. If you have questions for me, for Jacob, just comments, concerns, whatever, put them in the comments below. If there's somebody you think who could use this information, as always, that is why there is a share button, so you can share it with those people. And other than that, we will see you next time.
Wait. We gotta have a cool sign off. You have
All
to
right.
come up with a catchphrase. Do you not have a catchphrase at the end of it?
I do not.
You gotta have a catchphrase,
All
dude.
right. I don't have one this time. I want to make sure it's good, but on the next episode, you
You
can be
that is
ready for
my
a
challenge
catchphrase.
for you
Okay.
specifically.
All right. Everyone listening, be ready for a catchphrase.
There we go.